All right, so why did I walk away from a 7-figure-a-year business? Would I still make that choice today? How did my Etsy suspension, like getting suspended on Etsy, play into this? Why has it been so long for me to actually share this personal story on my YouTube channel? Why, when you watch my past videos, I look like I'm a dying soul inside? Why didn't I just make $1 million by selling courses and coaching on my YouTube channel? Why didn't I just do that? In this video, we're going through a very personal, honest truth of the last 5 years or whatever I've been on YouTube. My YouTube channel has never really been a place where I've shared personal story. To date, I have probably invested over, 10,000 hours into this YouTube channel, giving away free information about what I learn inside of my Etsy businesses. But the extent of me sharing personal stuff hasn't really happened since I posted this one video. But the truth is, up until recently, 2023 and 2024 were the hardest years of my life. It shows. If you go back into some of my videos, I look like I'm dead. But it's not because I'm just an Etsy seller per se. It's because of all of the hard lessons I had to learn along the way. And if you're somebody in business wanting to be serious and get into entrepreneurship, then this storytelling time is going to be extremely beneficial for you because we're about to unpack the whole story. So let's get into it. All right. So part one of the story, we'll call it the rise. Starting back in 2018, I launched my first Etsy shop and we saw success really, really fast. I was completely broke. I was coming off 2 years of entrepreneurial failures. So I had been trying to build a business, some sort of business for 2 years before I started my Etsy shop. And because of all the lessons I learned then, when I started my Etsy shop, I already had the skills to really build a successful e-commerce business because prior to that, I had been learning what basically not to do from the inside of other people's e-commerce businesses. I was broke. I was sleeping on my grandma's couch. The trunk of my car was my closet. And thanks to my grandma, she gave me her spare bedroom where she let me use it as my office. And then she actually ended up buying me a cot that I would fold up and sleep in my office at night. So I had this 10 by 10 room that I could work in for free. And again, that business became very, very successful pretty quick, but I don't think it happened on accident. And this was pre-COVID. So we were seeing crazy numbers before COVID even was a conversation. The business went from doing zero to over $100,000 months within the first 6 months of going live. And everything was great. I thought I figured it all out. I was doing $100,000 a month in this little room in my grandma's house. Who would have thought? Now we're going to move into part two, which is what I would call the fall. I had no employees at the time, and I was way past the due date of needing employees. So I was still doing the making, the fulfillment, the shipping, the customer service. I was doing everything myself. And so I made the first amateur mistake, which is just, I need help. So let me turn to anybody and ask for help instead of qualifying employees because I had no idea how to actually be a real business owner. So I started overhiring, overpaying, not qualifying, and just adding people to this business, thinking that it was going to help me grow more. When we grew to about 6 employees, when in reality, I probably only needed 1 or 2 at max, 2 maybe really good people, and that was it. So I was running a really, really high payroll, and I also had no leadership skills. So I had no idea how to show up to this office and lead them. But it didn't feel that bad yet because we were still making really, really good profit and revenue. Then we get into mistake number 2. This was the start of shiny object syndrome. So somewhere in this time, I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel and I posted this video about my first year in business. This video went viral. I had no idea about how to monetize YouTube videos or sell courses or anything like that. And honestly, I didn't really want to sell courses because I had this crazy imposter syndrome around selling education, even though it's a totally legitimate way to make a business. And a lot of people get shamed for it. But in reality, all my friends that sell courses it's real value. No one is oh my gosh, I hate you because you doubled my sales. You know what I mean? Especially if you're legit. So anyway, I start this YouTube channel, which is now another time and energy and effort. At the time, there was only 2 YouTubers. There was Dave from Add to Cart and this girl called Starla Moore, who are still on YouTube. They're OG sellers. They're absolutely amazing. Dave is actually the reason I feel like I was successful on Etsy because he taught me Etsy ads. And that's really how we scaled from 10K to 100K was because of our Etsy ads. So shout out to both of them. I'll link their channels below. While I start YouTube, which is its own engine. I really have no business plan. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And this is called shiny object syndrome in business, by the way. This is when you have something called this Midas touch, where you think that everything you touch is going to turn to gold, which in theory, it felt like that because my Etsy shop was crushing it. We were doing over 6 figures a month. Plus, I have this YouTube channel. That video just got 1 million views. We don't know what we're going to do with it yet, but things feel good. But shiny object syndrome is when you start picking up other businesses, not really fully thinking them through and just doing them because ultimately you're just bored with the first thing that you built. Or maybe you're starting not to like it because, you have to show up to employees that you don't actually know how to lead. So instead of fixing that problem, you start picking up other projects, but more projects mean more problems. And hopefully you can catch yourself if you start doing this. This leads me to mistake number 2, which was shiny objects syndrome number 2, which was we have this Etsy shop, we have this YouTube channel, and then on top of it, I learned about Amazon FBA. And I learned about this opportunity of Amazon. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to figure out how to sell on Amazon. So our products weren't really a fit for Amazon. So that meant we had to go find products that were a better fit because Amazon is all about selling thousands of units a day at very, very small margins. And our products, because of the nature of the handmadeness of the product, didn't fit Amazon because we couldn't be price competitive. So that means that even though we were kind of selling in the same niche, I had to go build another business basically, because even just sourcing different products is a completely different business. And so I go down this rabbit hole of trying to do FBA, Etsy, which by the way, that's not even Etsy. We also have our Shopify store and now YouTube all at the same time. We get scammed in thousands of units of packaging. We realize that we're probably going to need more than $50,000 to do this right. And we're still struggling because we're building this Etsy business at the same time. So we're about 4 months into this Amazon business and we're realizing that this is just we bit off way more than we could chew, basically. And I've lost probably a couple $10,000 doing this. Mind you, also, not only that, but at the expense of neglecting our Etsy and Shopify brand, which then leads me to mistake number 4, which was shiny object syndrome number 3. Amazon is kind of coming to an end now because we're realizing, we don't really want to lose any more money, but we still have our Etsy and our Shopify brand. It's still doing pretty well. Still way too much of overhead. Have no idea what I'm doing in terms of managing employees. But then COVID hits and my dad lost his job. And I said, you know what? What a good idea. Let's open up a second brand, a completely different product set with completely different issues. And let's be 50-50 partners. So I go into business with my dad, opening up a second Etsy brand, selling completely different handmade products. And these handmade products that we decided on come with a lot of quality control issues. Again, when we are excited about an opportunity, we just see the opportunity. We don't see the problems that come with it until we're in it. So now this is when it brings us to part 3, the crash. So now at this point, I'm basically running all these different businesses. We have a failed FBA store, 2 Etsy stores, a Shopify store, and a YouTube channel that we're trying to do all at the same time, all of which have different needs, fears, and goals, all of which could equally use 100% of my time and energy and effort, all of which are getting half-assed attention. Anyone from the outside looking in could be like, Hannah, hey, this is like a really bad idea. Like, you probably should just focus on one thing. But I did not have that person at that point in my life to tell me that. So this is when the crash happens. So my main Etsy shop that was the sole producer of income that paid my employees, paid myself, paid for our office, because by that time we were able to move out of my grandma's house and actually go rent an office. We get suspended on Etsy. And there's actually a video about this on my YouTube channel. And so then obviously I can't afford this payroll. I can't afford all these people. So I have to fire basically everyone. But the kicker was that Etsy IP address was also connected to my other Etsy shop IP address. So the second Etsy shop that I started with my dad also gets suspended. And we're suspended for about 9 months. Now, the pro in this is that it forced us to learn Shopify, and we actually started scaling our Shopify store to a couple $1,000s a day, but the margins were like a fraction. So like before we were getting like a 30% profit, where our profit margins dropped to about 10%. So then during this suspension, where I'm now just kind of giving up hope, instead of, learning my lesson or just going full in on YouTube or something like that, or selling courses, I decide to start a software company. My software company is called ProfitTree, and it is still alive today, but this has been its own upward battle. ProfitTree is an all-in-one Etsy tool. So when we first launched, it was only specifically for profit tracking and ads optimization. But now, moving into this month and next month, we're launching product research features. But the initial idea for ProfitTree was to solve my own problems. So when in e-commerce, whether you're selling on Etsy, Shopify, wherever, you have a bunch of transactions happening all the time with fees, with product costs, with marketing costs, right? And so you want to see your profit margin. So it's a real-time profit tracker for your business. The second feature is an ads optimization. So it shows you how you can control your ad cost percentage and optimize your ads better, basically. And no, I'm not a software developer. So I actually went on to a tech startup dating app called Y Combinator. And I did like their Tinder matching program where basically I was matched with a business partner and we started building this tool for 6 months. Within this 6 months period, I actually got all of my Etsy accounts back. But by that time, I was so jaded and so burnt out with this idea of my business that I basically gave it up. So the question is if I knew what I knew today, would I have walked away? Well, for context, I had already been fully engrossed in this idea of ProfitTree. However, we got our account back, and even though it was suspended for 9 months, it wasn't doing $100,000 a month anymore, but it was still doing like 20K months back out the gates. And I could have done the thing I needed to do to rebuild it, but I was so emotional about it and so just let down that I let my emotions take over me and walk away. Knowing what I know now about business and how to run a business and how to manage people, big mistake. Big mistake. And that's where the lesson really comes in, because a lot of times we will self-sabotage in business and we don't even realize it, right? So like instead of me just learning how to become a true entrepreneur and a CEO, right, I chased all of these get rich quick things, or not really get rich quick, but just neglected the first thing that was actually serving me. And this is a very, very common thing in business that I realized that I'm actually not alone in this. So most of the time, believe it or not, when a business owner prematurely exits or sells their company, it's not actually because the business is even failing or the actual business. Like it's not like they dislike what they're actually doing. What they dislike is the relationship that they built with their business. So in my case, instead of me just solving the problem and leveling up as an owner, an entrepreneur, right, I basically self-sabotage. Ultimately, business is like a marriage, right? You can neglect it. If you neglect the relationship, right, it's going to get worse. If you nourish it and work at it every day, it will get better over time. And that was kind of just like something I didn't really know. I wasn't really educated in at the time. So then we move into part 4. So usually in like a story book, right, this is where everything goes bad and then things are supposed to get better. But part 4 is called the explosion because it gets way worse. So now I have walked away from my business that was a 7-figure-a-year business that I definitely most likely could have rebuilt up back to 7 figures. And now at this point, I am fully convinced that I can go out and build this software company. I'm in this 6-month partnership that fails, but I'm not giving up yet. So I go out and I find new business partners. Not only that, but with these new business partners, we are now going to actually invest money. And so we did something called bootstrapping in software. And that is where you don't take investment, you just use your own cash basically to fund the venture. So I basically put in my entire life savings into this project. They equally put in a bunch of money and we build ProfitTree. We build ProfitTree and its first version, which was profit tracking and ads optimization. We go to market and we are not seeing the sales that we thought we were, or at least not the traction that I convinced them on. Let's just be fair in that sense. And this is where things got very dark for me, like very, very dark. I have all of these different businesses that are all kind of not working that well. I have an Etsy shop with my dad that I've kind of neglected him. I show up here and there when I can. I have a software company and I still have my YouTube channel, right? All of which are not income producing. And the reality is there's only one common denominator.
It's me.
So at this point, I just feel like I'm drowning in my own creation, right? While letting everyone down. My first business with the team of employees that I had to fire, my dad, my new business partners that now we have crazy tension because they've also put in a bunch of money and thousands of hours. And I'm just kind of like, in the middle of everything. And so what the issue that we found, especially with ProfitTree in its first version, is that most Etsy sellers are just struggling to get their first sales. They want to get more sales. They want to get more traffic. And I designed ProfitTree for a 7-figure seller like myself. But the truth is what ProfitTree needed to be was a tool to help people become 7-figure seller, not serve them once they're already there. Although profit tracking and ad optimization do help you grow your shop, don't get me wrong, they are actually necessary if you want to scale up to 6 figures, 7 figures. But like I said, most Etsy sellers are struggling just to get their first 100,000, 10,000 sales. And so that is why ProfitTree is now also, instead of just being internal analytics, is going to be your all-in-one Etsy tool. So we're not just your tool for scaling your shop, but we're also your tool for discovering products and listing optimization. Right now, this month, we're launching something called our product research tool. And then next month, we're launching something called our Etsy radar tool, which this is going to allow you to basically cancel any monthly subscription that you're paying for, because we're offering it for a one-time payment of $67. So you can go in, do your product research, actually see real demand on your listings, and make your decisions about what you're going to sell on Etsy based off of data instead of just blindly launching listings. Because the truth is you need to know if there's actually demand for the product that you have to sell instead of just blindly making what you want to make. And that is also a very beginner mistake. And I guess you could call this the part 5, the turning phase, right? I wouldn't say we're in the ascent phase yet of business, but when times get really hard, which they've been pretty hard, I think they've been hard for a lot of people over the last couple of years, you have 2 choices. You can either sink or you can swim. And this is your reminder right now. If you feel like you're sinking, sinking is just not an option. You have to choose to swim. And as long as you choose to swim, you will figure it out, right? Like, as cheesy as it is, like, the only failure is actually giving up, but like, that is actually true, right? Even if you're giving up on your current iteration of whatever you're doing, as long as you're still swimming towards something, you will figure it out eventually. I proved that to myself in the first 2 years of me failing before my first Etsy shop made it in 2018. It's just a little bit more of an ego trip now that it happened again 5 years later after that happened. But that's just the universe. It's a lesson that I had to learn. And so that is why now in this part 5, we're turning. We are getting rid of the things that do not serve us and building a better business. And we are building a better business that ultimately aligns with why I started YouTube in the first place. Like, if I look back at why was I so passionate about starting YouTube, it was because I was passionate about sharing my story and helping make more entrepreneurs, right? Like, I fundamentally believe that the world is a better place with more growth mindset individuals that want to achieve financial success, want to work from home, want to spend more time with their kids, right? And that is why we start businesses in the first place. And so that is how we are trying to support this community. And ultimately, that's just our mission. And it took me a long time to get back to that mission just because, like I said, I was so just in fight or flight. And guys, that is the full story of how we got here today. But we're never going to give up. We're never going to stop trying. We're never going to stop growing. And that is just the entrepreneur journey. If you look at this chart, this is such a realistic chart of what an entrepreneur journey looks like. From one day to the next, you feel like you're on top of the world. Everything's crashing. Oh my gosh, it's a little better. Everything sucks, right? But the reality is you're building something called identity capital. And with every valley, you're still going to a higher peak. So even though you might feel like you're going down, right, your overall trajectory is going up. And I want you to keep this chart in mind for any of your future valleys because you can't avoid them in business. It is a part of this journey. I hope you guys got some value out of this video and we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.